My name is Avery. I'm a 62-year-old housewife. 2 years ago, my husband, who I had been married to for many years, passed away suddenly due to an illness. Now, I live a modest life, managing the inheritance he left me. I have 2 sons, both of whom are married. When my eldest son, Henry, got married, he and his wife offered to live with me. I told them, I appreciate your concern, but I'm still fit and fine on my own. I don't want to be a burden to you newlyweds. But Henry insisted, I can't bear the thought of you being alone. As the eldest son, it's my responsibility to take care of you. Please don't worry about being a nuisance. And so, we ended up living together. Henry's wife, Rhea, is very young, 9 years younger than Henry, only 23. At first, I worried if such a young girl could handle being a wife. But she was the one Henry chose. I found no reason to object to their marriage, so I accepted it. When we decided to live together, I asked Henry, is Rhea okay with living with me? Won't a young girl like her dislike living with an old woman like me? Henry reassured me, saying, it's fine. Rhea is kind. She'll get along with you. Besides, having you around will help us with the housework. He was adamant about us living together. I couldn't find a reason to object after hearing that. Sure, I'm getting on in years, and it's too late to start worrying when something happens. Thinking that it'd be more reassuring than living alone, I gratefully accepted Henry's proposal. After we had been living together for a while, there was a time when I asked Rhea, sorry to ask, but could you bring in the laundry? I'm going out to get groceries for dinner. Up until then, I hadn't often asked her for anything, but that day I had unavoidable errands to run before shopping, so I decided to ask her. However, Rhea retorted, why do I have to do it? I'm busy right now. You should bring it in before you go, shouldn't you? She seemed occupied playing a game on her smartphone. Even before that, she hadn't helped with any household chores, but I chose not to say anything out of consideration. However, seeing her just lying there playing her game that day, I said a bit more firmly, if it's just a game, you can play it later, right? Could you please help out a bit? Rhea, looking annoyed, grumbled, you're always nagging. Whoever's free should do the chores, right? You could bring it in before shopping. You're really annoying. With a glare at me, she went to the balcony to bring in the laundry. I was taken aback by her rudeness, but I thought it wouldn't do any good to say anything more and upset her further, so I left the house as it was. After that day, Rhea began to harass me. Ignoring me became a daily occurrence. When she didn't like the food I cooked, she would say to Henry, I can't eat this. Hey, let's go out and eat. Just the 2 of us. And they would go out to eat, leaving me behind. Henry did try to consider my feelings, saying, think about Mom too. She went through all this trouble to cook. But when Rhea was in a bad mood, all he could do was say, sorry Mom, we're going to eat out today, and follow Rhea's orders. Rhea never did any housework, no matter how much I asked. Instead, she said, you're not working, right? Aren't you ashamed to rely on Henry for everything at your age? It's normal for you to do the chores, isn't it? She acted as if it was completely natural for me to do all the housework. Rhea accused me of not working, but she wasn't working either. She felt superior because she was supporting Henry, who was working. I hadn't told Rhea, but I wasn't unemployed. I had a little income from managing the apartment my husband left me. I also contributed to the household expenses, so I wasn't completely dependent on Henry. But Rhea seemed to think that because I wasn't working outside the home, I didn't have any income, and Henry was footing all the bills. Once, when I was cleaning, Rhea shouted at me, can't you clean a little quieter? That's noisy. I was just vacuuming normally, but Rhea was on a phone call and was complaining about me to the person on the other end, saying, hello, sorry about that. Yeah, it's Henry's mom. She's really noisy, isn't she? She should be able to do the housework quietly at this point. Even I was annoyed, and I told Henry about what had happened that day when he came home from work. You know, I'm not saying you have to do everything, but Rhea hasn't been helping at all with the housework. Not only that, but I got scolded just for vacuuming. It's normal to share chores, and I do my part, but I can't handle doing everything alone, especially when I get complaints, I told him. Henry replied, I'm sorry, I really am. I don't think Rhea means any harm. Maybe she was just in a bad mood today. I'll tell her to help out a bit more, so please cut her some slack today. But he didn't really take the matter seriously. Even so, I hoped that Henry would talk to Rhea, and I decided to watch how things unfolded without saying anything more. Half a year passed, and Rhea's attitude remained unchanged. She didn't even bother to pretend to help with the housework. I was utterly exhausted from managing all the chores for 3 people and constantly trying to accommodate Rhea. During this time, my second son, Lucas, happened to mention, "Mom, your birthday's coming up, right? Since Henry and Rhea will likely celebrate it on the day itself, why don't we celebrate it today? Renly also has a present for you, so let's go out for dinner." I accepted the invitation gladly. Lucas and his wife lived in an apartment about 30 minutes away from our house, so we didn't get to see each other often. Renly, Lucas's wife, was always kind and gentle, showing me a lot of care. When Lucas invited me, I replied without hesitation, "I'd love to, of course I'll go." That evening, after preparing dinner for Henry and Rhea, I joined Lucas and his family for dinner. They had reserved my favorite restaurant and surprised me with flowers and a gift bag for my birthday. It was a delightful evening, and I couldn't contain my happiness, saying, "Ah, this is so refreshing. It's been a long time since I've felt this happy." Moved by my words, Lucas asked, "Has something been bothering you with Henry? When you say it's been a while since you felt happy, it concerns me. Have things been tough for you lately?" Although I hadn't planned to complain, I explained that I was managing all the housework because Rhea wouldn't help, and how I had been scolded for being noisy and spoken to harshly. Lucas, exchanging glances with Renly, spoke up, "Mom, you don't have to endure this if it's difficult. You have income from the stocks and apartment rents Dad left behind, right? You're only staying with them because Henry wanted it that way. But if Rhea treats you badly and Henry doesn't support you, you shouldn't have to live like this. If it's hard for you to say it, I'll intervene." Renly added, "If you feel lonely living alone, we can live together. I love you very much, so please don't hesitate." Their words moved me deeply, and I felt tears welling up. I expressed my gratitude and decided to persevere a little longer, reassured by their support. "Thank you, but I'll keep trying. They're my precious family after all. I truly want to find harmony with Rhea," I replied. Returning home that night, I noticed the dishes they had used were still in the sink. With a sigh, I began to clean up but stopped myself, thinking, "I always do this. It's only fair they do it tomorrow morning." So, I left the dishes as they were and retired to bed. The next morning, as I prepared breakfast, Rhea came into the kitchen. While cooking, I greeted her, "Good morning, Rhea. I'll handle breakfast. Could you please wash the dishes from yesterday?" Rhea ignored my request and instead settled on the couch, engrossed in her smartphone. Frustration bubbled up within me at her dismissive attitude, and I couldn't help but raise my voice. "It's basic courtesy to clean up after yourself." In her usual manner, Rhea retorted, "I've told you countless times, isn't that your job, mom-in-law? You know the saying, 'He who does not work, neither shall he eat.' You eat every day, so you should do the housework." Henry hurried into the room upon hearing our exchange, looking concerned. "What's going on so early in the morning? Are you two arguing?" he asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. With a sigh, I explained to Henry, "I simply asked Rhea to wash the dishes from yesterday. I was just stating the obvious." Upon hearing my reply, Henry muttered, "Seriously, this early?" and headed to wash his face, clearly irritated. But I couldn't hold back any longer and snapped, "It's not just about this morning. Every single day, I'm the one doing all the housework. Everything, including yours. Do you realize how exhausting that is? At the very least, you could wash your own dishes." My outburst, rare for me, startled Henry. "I'm sorry, I'll take care of it," he said hastily, moving to start on the dishes. However, Rhea interjected, "Why should Henry, who works outside, have to do that? You depend on Henry, so it's your responsibility, mom-in-law." She stopped Henry's hands, clearly dissatisfied with the idea of him doing chores. Then she turned to me and said, "You're living off a pension like a pauper, causing trouble. Get out of this apartment." That was the last straw for me. Why should I leave my own home? This house is in my name, I retorted to Rhea. Turning to Henry, I confessed my true feelings. "Rhea seems to have it all wrong, but you understand, Henry. It's you two who should leave. I can't bear living together anymore. I've reached my limit." Rhea looked visibly surprised and asked, "What do you mean? How can a jobless mother-in-law own a house? Aren't you relying on Henry?" I clarified, "I am the landlord of this apartment. I don't rent. This apartment belongs to me. When Henry's father passed away, he left me stocks, apartments, and land. I manage these assets and generate enough income to support myself. I've never depended on Henry financially. Even after we started living together, I cover most of the utilities and food expenses. Ria was speechless, turning to Henry for confirmation. So we've been living without spending much money, she queried. Henry simply nodded in response. I chimed in. While Henry may have wanted to provide for you, Ria, he couldn't possibly manage all aspects of my financial life, taking you out to eat, shopping, and such. Henry himself isn't earning that much yet. At that moment, Ria seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation. Her demeanor changed, her face paling as she said, I'm sorry, mother-in-law. I didn't realize, and I've been disrespectful. Please forgive me. Realizing that her comfortable living arrangement could be at risk if we parted ways, Ria continued to apologize repeatedly in a flustered manner. Understanding their realization, I reassured them, I'm not saying I will forgive you. We're family after all, but continuing to live together isn't feasible. We need to address this. You both should find a place to rent and live on your own. Henry reacted urgently to my suggestion. I worry about you, Mom. From now on, Ria and I will pitch in with the housework. I just don't want you to be alone. However, I reassured him, I'll be fine. If you're that concerned, I can stay with Lucas and his family. They offered when we went out for dinner recently, knowing I might be uneasy about living alone. Initially, I wanted to give it more time living with you two, but now I see it's not feasible. It might inconvenience Lucas, but I'll be closer to them. Henry seemed to grasp my resolve, simply saying, I understand, without further comment. In contrast, Ria retorted, so you're abandoning us even though we've been taking care of you. Her tone blamed me. Recognizing arguing would be fruitless, I chose not to respond. Within a month, Henry and Ria secured a new place and moved out. Given their budget, they could only afford an older, smaller apartment. Ria, who had never worked previously, reportedly took up a part-time job to make ends meet. Henry confided that Ria frequently complained about managing household chores in her job. Their life seemed fraught with continuous arguments, and Henry appeared utterly exhausted. Henry continued to reach out, pleading, if only you would forgive us, we want to live together again. Yet I have firmly decided not to revisit that chapter of my life. After Henry and Ria moved out, I relocated to Lucas's home. Despite my insistence that they needed to accommodate me, Lucas expressed, having you here really helps, Mom. Renly also wants you to stay. She's eager to learn your cooking. Thus, we made the decision to live together. Since then, Lucas and Renly have assured me, feel free to speak up if something bothers you. We'll manage chores together, ensuring we don't inconvenience each other. Nowadays, I spend my time cooking alongside Renly, pursuing my hobbies, and simply enjoying a fulfilling life. I am genuinely content. Going forward, I strive to maintain this happiness without compromise. Hey Mary, sorry to bug you at work. What's up? I couldn't catch you yesterday because you were pretty elusive, so I thought I'd track you down. Nicole pointed you out to me. You probably already know, but I'm seeing John. I'm Mary, 35, a nurse at the biggest hospital around. Mom of 2 boys, ages 3 and 5, and John's my hubby. He's 5 years my senior and works as a doc at a nearby clinic. He used to be at the hospital, but with the kids, he switched to a clinic with no night shifts. I could easily lay off work with John's job, but house chores don't quite suit me, so here I am, juggling nursing and parenting. Crazy, right? Up early, sorting lunches, breakfast, laundry, dropping kids off, and then off to work. But hey, I prefer it this way. John, on the flip side, strolls into the clinic at 9, so he's a late riser. By the time he's up, we're out the door. He wraps up his clinic duties and heads home around 9 in the evening. By then, I'm beat, having handled dinners, baths, bedtime routines, you name it. But I still manage to whip up dinner for John. Not that I mind really. He's not much help around the house, but it's better that way. If he tried, I'd probably redo everything. Thanks for dinner, Mary. It was delicious as always. He always says that, and it warms my heart. How about a trip to the zoo this Sunday? Sounds fantastic. The kids will be thrilled. On his days off, he takes them out, being the cool dad. At the zoo last Sunday, the kids were ecstatic, running around like mad. Seeing them happy makes me happy. That's what it's all about, right? Here you go, Mary. Huh? He hands me a cute cell phone charm with a blue penguin on it. It matches the one on his phone. Then he shows me his phone, and there it is, the matching charm. I blushed a bit, feeling like we were back in high school, but it warmed my heart nonetheless. Thanks. It's a tad embarrassing, but I'm happy, I replied. You know, penguins are pretty loyal creatures. Some spend their whole lives with the same partner, John remarked, making me chuckle. I couldn't help but think perhaps we'd be like those penguins, sticking together through thick and thin, but who knows what the future holds. One day, I managed to leave work on time and rushed out of the hospital's bike parking lot, headed for the daycare. "Are you Mary?" An unfamiliar young woman approached me. "Yes, that's me," I confirmed, curious. She introduced herself as Nicole, expressing her gratitude for John's support. Her sudden appearance caught me off guard. She was strikingly beautiful with long hair, not someone I knew well. "Are you here for a checkup today?" I asked, puzzled. "No, just passing by. Sorry if I startled you," Nicole explained before leaving. Her presence left me uneasy. What could she possibly want in the bike parking lot, meant only for hospital staff? That evening, I asked John about Nicole's visit. "A woman named Nicole greeted you today at the hospital. Who is she?" I inquired. "Huh. She's a nurse at my clinic. I'll ask her next time," John replied, seeming surprised. His eagerness to end the conversation left me feeling distrustful. I encountered Nicole again about 2 weeks later, this time outside our house. It was when the daycare called, informing me that our eldest son had a fever and needed to be picked up. As I biked home with the kids, I spotted a figure waiting in front of our house. I immediately hit the brakes, pulling my bike to the side of the road. Though they were a bit distant, I could unmistakably recognize John and Nicole. I dialed John's number just to confirm. "Hey Mary, what's up?" "I'm pretty swamped at work right now," he answered, even though he was clearly standing in front of our house. "I'm sorry, our eldest son has a fever, so I'm heading home. Thought I'd let you know," I explained. "Got it. I'll try to wrap up early today," he replied before hanging up. The two figures in front of our house then headed toward the clinic. I waited for a while before heading home. Luckily, despite the fever, my son seemed to be in good spirits, so there wasn't much cause for concern. But as they say, it's better to be vigilant. After ensuring he was settled with his favorite cartoon and some snacks, I took a moment to collect myself. The image of John and Nicole kept haunting me. I didn't want to entertain doubts, yet the suspicion of infidelity crept in, and I found myself gripping the penguin charm on my cell phone, as if seeking reassurance. In the evening, as promised, John rushed home and showed genuine concern for our son. He was such a devoted family man. Surely he couldn't be having an affair. At least, that's what I desperately wanted to believe. "Mary, is something wrong? Did you notice something when you came home this afternoon?" John asked, his demeanor uneasy. No, nothing. It just seemed like the chair was in a different position," I replied, feeling my suspicions growing stronger in the face of John's evident discomfort. "I thought maybe you came home for lunch." "No, I didn't come home." "Maybe it's just your imagination," John chuckled, quickly diverting his attention to the newspaper. "Just my imagination, huh?" I let it slide for the moment but went to bed with an uneasy feeling, our conversation lingering in the air. The next day, our son's fever had subsided, so I dropped him off at daycare and returned to work. While busy at my job, the head nurse informed me of a visitor. Wondering who it could be, I headed to the designated lobby and found Nicole waiting there. "Hello, Mary. Sorry for interrupting you at work," she greeted me. "What can I do for you? I saw you hiding yesterday and thought I should say hi, so here I am," Nicole explained. I noticed her change in tone from our first meeting, now irritatingly flirtatious. Despite clearly being over 20, the way she spoke in public was rather off-putting. "John doesn't like older women like you. He said he prefers young girls like me, so I was thinking it's probably best if you step aside. You get what I'm saying, right?" "Not really," I replied, puzzled. "John and I are dating. You get it now. Look, here's the evidence," Nicole declared, opening her smartphone to show me a picture of them together in a hotel room, both wearing robes and looking content. Was his recent business trip a lie? Seeing my stern expression, Nicole smirked with satisfaction. "Now you get it, right? Hurry up and get a divorce, old lady." Having said what she came to say, she cheerfully left the hospital, seemingly content with herself. I felt as though a decision was being pushed upon me, yet I had already resolved myself to it. There was no room for doubt. It was merely a matter of the moment arriving sooner than expected. Taking swift action, I informed the head nurse that I was feeling unwell and left work early, also requesting leave for the following day. Though she seemed puzzled by my sudden uplifted spirits, I managed to secure her approval and promptly headed towards my destination. The confrontation was set for tomorrow. The next day, I found myself seated in the director's office of the clinic where John worked, with my father, who also happened to be the director, sitting across from me. He scrutinized the photos and documents I had laid out on the desk, his expression grave. Yes, from the moment I first met Nicole, I had enlisted the services of a detective agency to investigate John's infidelity, aiming to dispel the unease I had been feeling. Fortunately, I had the means to do so. Regardless of the outcome, I viewed it as an investment in securing a positive future for my family and had commissioned a month-long investigation. Despite Nicole's limited contact, the evidence gathered over the past 2 weeks was damning. It revealed that she had accompanied John on his recent business trip, sharing the same room. Furthermore, even in their daily lives, they spent considerable time together. They had been meeting almost every day during the breaks between John's consultations, even at our own home. My father's expression soured, but he lifted his gaze with a determined look. "Mary, what do you want to do? Consider the children and weigh your decision carefully," he urged. "I'm filing for divorce," I replied resolutely. I empathized with my father's plight, but my resolve remained unshaken. As I delivered my decision, he sighed, asking for a moment before dialing John's extension on the internal phone. After a brief interval, John, oblivious to the situation, entered with a smile upon seeing me. "Mary, you're here. Are you off work today?" His smile faded as he noticed the spread of photos on the table, his face draining of color with each passing second. What is this?" he stammered, his eyes fixed on the incriminating evidence before him. "John, you've been having an affair with Nicole. With this much evidence, denial isn't an option. We're getting a divorce," I stated firmly. "A divorce? Why? This was just a fling. What I value is you and our family," John protested, his voice tinged with desperation. "Nicole came to disrupt my work, claiming you weren't interested in older women like me," I countered. "That's not true. You're beautiful and you're not old," John interjected, bewildered. My father promptly called for Nicole, startling her. "Doctor, you call for me." Nicole entered, visibly pleased to be personally summoned by the director, though her expression faltered upon noticing the tense atmosphere. "Nicole, could you explain these pictures?" my father inquired, gesturing towards the evidence on the table. Nicole's brows furrowed momentarily before she composed herself, wearing a smug smirk. "I apologize, doctor. John and I are dating. Of course, I know about Mary, but I could support him as a housewife. This way, he can concentrate on his work and be a devoted father," Nicole declared confidently, seemingly mistaking my father for John's own. John, visibly shaken, appeared at a loss for words while my father turned to me with a solemn inquiry. "Mary, have you decided to break up with John? I'll ensure you're compensated and will take good care of the children, so please don't worry." I couldn't help but chuckle at Nicole's dramatic speech, though she didn't seem amused. Instead, she appeared slightly irritated. "It's not severance pay, it's alimony. And since I'll be the one raising the kids, I'll need child support from John," I clarified matter-of-factly. "Well, that can't be helped, but I'm glad you agreed to the divorce. Now I can be with John," Nicole continued, seemingly on a roll. "Stop it," John muttered under his breath, but Nicole, caught up in her momentum, didn't seem to hear him. "Well then, as soon as you're ready, could you leave the house?" Nicole's words were abruptly halted as John grabbed her shoulder to silence her. Her surprised gaze met his, and John spoke up. "Nicole, I'm sorry. It was just a fling. My family is important to me, and I can't be with you," he confessed, causing color to drain from Nicole's face. "Why? You told me you were divorcing her to marry me. You said you'd make me the wife of the future director, and I believed you." "I don't understand," Nicole protested, her confusion evident. "You told me you're not into older women like her. You said how lonely you are with her, always at work and not at home," she continued, her tone pleading. It felt like I was witnessing a messy breakup unfolding before my eyes, and my impatience began to grow. "That's enough. I'm filing for divorce from John. I'll be seeking alimony from both of you, and John, you'll need to pay child support too. That's all," I declared, attempting to conclude the conversation. My father, understanding my temperament, chuckled and interjected, "Well, since my daughter said her piece." "Wait, did you just say your daughter?" John interrupted, visibly stunned. Yes, Mary is my child and John is my son-in-law, my father clarified, causing Nicole to panic. What happens if he's no longer the heir? Can't he live in that big house anymore? Nicole panicked, realizing the implications. Mary, I'm truly sorry. John suddenly fell to his knees, bowing deeply to me. Nicole, now realizing she was nothing more than a fling, was left stunned. I can ask for your forgiveness, but could you possibly give me another chance? John's desperate bowing likely stemmed from the fear of losing his job. However, no matter how deeply he bowed, I couldn't find it in me to forgive him. Besides the affair, there was another reason why forgiving John was impossible for me. That's impossible. Do you recognize this? I pulled out my cell phone and showed him the blue penguin charm. John's face paled, confirming his guilt. Yesterday, when John showed me the photo at the hospital, I had been elated. We had matching charms, and he had shared with me the significance of penguins mating for life. I cherished the blue penguin charm he had given me, but now I noticed something crucial. Nicole also had the light blue charm on her phone. Yes, Nicole confirmed. John bought it for me. Admitting defeat, John confessed to buying it. That's why it's impossible. We should break up. Nicole has the exact same one, not just a different color. That tells me enough about your feelings. I can't forgive you, no matter what. Please, Mary, John pleaded, but my father intervened, expressing his outrage at John's betrayal and Nicole's disruption of clinic discipline. As a clinic director, I must punish both of you, my father declared. Be prepared for that. I'm so sorry, but please let me keep my job, John pleaded. We'll go through lawyers from now on. You both can leave for today, and from tomorrow, you'll be on paid leave. You don't have to come to work. Wait, I don't understand, I interjected. John, you're a doctor. Can't you work elsewhere? Quit this small clinic and let's start over. Please, Nicole, let's break up, John added. I never imagined losing my family or happiness. Are you freaking serious? You deceived me. I lashed out, my father intervening to silence the bickering between John and Nicole. Despite John's past insistence that family was paramount, his actions had betrayed us. The thought of returning to the house where John and Nicole had apparently spent every day together filled me with dread. So, I requested to stay with my parents for a while, taking my children with me. Arriving at their house, a sense of relief washed over me. Exhaustion consumed me, and I fell into a deep sleep, only to awaken in pitch darkness. Startled, I checked the clock, realizing it was midnight. My cell phone was illuminated with numerous missed calls and text messages from John. I couldn't bear to hear his voice, so I read through his apologies and excuses for the affair. Among them, I found a plea for my father's intervention, claiming remorse. A cynical laugh escaped me. It seemed John's remorse was more about securing his position at the clinic. Fury and pity overwhelmed me, leading me to forcefully tear off the penguin charm from my cell phone and discard it. A wave of sadness engulfed me, tears flowing freely even in the dead of night. My mother, awakened by my sobs, offered her comforting presence, staying by my side throughout the night. Family's warmth enveloped me, and as I yearned to build a family like this, my tears continued to flow. The next morning, I awoke feeling lighter. Though my mother expressed concern, I've always been one to bounce back quickly. I had completely cut off all emotional ties with John. That very day, I met with a lawyer introduced by my father and swiftly arranged for alimony and child support. I left the rest to the lawyer and resumed my daily life. It took longer than expected, but eventually, the lawyer informed me that the divorce was finalized. John had put up a fight, unwilling to let go of both the marriage and the clinic. However, he eventually agreed to a settlement after realizing he had little chance of winning in court. Once the divorce was finalized, Nicole and her parents discovered the news and pressured John into marrying her, citing our child. I had demanded substantial alimony, and John was left with almost no money after paying the lump sum for child support. Nicole was furious at the turn of events, neglecting housework, which led to constant arguments between them. The lawyer kept me informed of these developments. Moreover, although my father now ran a small clinic, he had a vast network from his previous role as a department head at a large hospital. News of John's situation spread quickly in the area, making it challenging for him to find employment as a doctor elsewhere. Whether he would leave town or find a different job was of little concern to me now. My father decided to rent out our former house to someone he knew, respecting my desire not to return there. I resolved to build a new home for my family of 3 with my own finances. Until then, I plan to stay at my parents' house to care for my children. Despite my young age, I jokingly mentioned to my parents that I wondered if there might be someone else out there for me. They laughed, teasing me about my impatience. Tonight's pot roast is off limits to you. Here, have this instead. But this is leftover soup and salad from 2 days ago. It might have gone bad. You can handle it, right? Don't be wasteful. Eat up. I don't want to waste good meat on you. I can eat this. What was that? Leftovers are perfect for you. Stop complaining and eat up. My mother-in-law always directs such nastiness towards me. She's so obnoxious, it just gets under my skin. My name is Mary, a 27-year-old woman juggling both work and home responsibilities. I got married only a year ago, so I don't have any kids yet. Right now, we're living with my husband's family in their house. I never wanted to live with my in-laws, but since my husband is the eldest son, we didn't have much choice. I thought it was ridiculous to live with my in-laws in this day and age, but both my husband and my mother-in-law hold on to old-fashioned values. Moreover, my father-in-law is no longer with us, and my husband expressed his concern for his mother. I have no idea what he's worried about. She's still so full of life. My brother-in-law is single and working overseas, so I guess that's just how it has to be. But I still hate it. Now even my husband has started being mean to me, following in his mother's footsteps. He never said anything mean before we got married, but his attitude changed drastically. I feel deceived. He's always acting superior and he always yells at me. It gives me a headache. Hey you, why is my shirt so wrinkled? Ha, is it wrinkled? Yeah, I'll be embarrassed at work like this. Can't you even iron properly? Why can't you do something so simple? No, I did iron it. Your properly is not proper at all. Realize that. What a useless wife you are. That's so mean. You don't have to say it like that. Are you talking back to me? Your face is as wrinkled as this shirt, and you're annoying. Seriously, you look older than you are. It's a turn-off. Oh really? Before we got married, he used to call me adorable. He treated me like a princess. But now he insults my parents and laughs about it. I don't understand why he would say such a thing. I'm not wrinkled or anything. It crossed my mind that he's actually balding for his age. I even found myself wishing that he would go completely bald one day. Our marriage is still pretty new, but I'm concerned about the future. Sometimes the word divorce even flashes through my mind. I was exhausted every day, and once I finished the housework after getting home from work, I felt like I was about to collapse. But my mother-in-law never helped with the chores. She seems to spend her whole day blankly watching TV. There were crumbs from snacks on the floor in front of the TV, and a lot of them. I had to clean them up, and I wish she would at least use a plate. Then, after dinner one day, my mother-in-law started to speak. Hey, let's all go to a spa resort when the new year comes. Oh, that sounds great, I replied. All right, I'll make the reservation. I'll get on it first thing tomorrow. Thanks, Mom, my husband said, beaming with joy. My husband and mother-in-law seemed very happy. I didn't really want to go with these people, but I was interested in the spa resort itself. I love visiting spa resorts, and this one was famous enough to be featured on TV recently. I thought it could be a great memory if I could ignore these annoying people, so inside, I was actually excited. After this, my mother-in-law said she had something to discuss. I wondered what it was and headed to the living room. You know we only have a small car, right? So, I was hoping we could borrow your family's minivan. After all, we can load lots of luggage in it. Alright, I guess my father has both a minivan and a small car. He usually commutes in the small car and uses the minivan for shopping trips or camping, which is his hobby. When I called my father, he readily agreed to lend it to us. With that, we welcomed the end of the year vacation. I had to clean the house, so it was again incredibly busy. However, thinking that a spa resort was waiting for me after getting through this year-end period helped me push through. As expected, my mother-in-law wouldn't move from the sofa. She laid there all the time, looking like a statue. Then, the morning of New Year's Day arrived. I woke up thinking about the long-awaited spa resort, but was surprised when I looked at the alarm clock. I had overslept. What? It's already 8:30, but David isn't here. Why? My husband, who should have been sleeping next to me, wasn't there either. I thought he might be in the bathroom, but he wasn't. Huh? Where is everyone? Did they go somewhere? I peeked into my mother-in-law's bedroom, but she wasn't there either. I began to wonder if they left without me. In a panic, I checked my smartphone. I always charge my phone in the living room before going to bed. There was a text notification on my smartphone. It was from my mother-in-law. "We're going to have fun. We never booked a place for you. You can spend a lonely New Year. It's okay if the bride doesn't come." So my mother-in-law never intended to take me with them from the start, and she planned to enjoy it with my husband. I was really sad at the same time. I was also very angry. It's terrible to deliberately stop my alarm clock to make me oversleep. I suspect the reason she made me drink a lot of alcohol the night before was to make me pass out. I regretted drinking that much, although it's a relief that she didn't drug me. I was irritated about her pushing drinks on me. Well, there's nothing I can do even if I get angry, so I decided I had to enjoy myself alone at home. I really wanted to go home to my parents, but they're also away on a trip by plane, so it's pointless to go back. Though I ordered a pizza for delivery that day and spent a lonely day. Then my mother-in-law and husband returned from their trip. They had brought smiles on their faces. It was so fun. It was the best. I want to stay there again, of course, without you, Mary. Here, this is the souvenir. What is this? It's a stone I found lying around. It suits you perfectly. Oh, is that so? I couldn't help but think that my mother-in-law was extremely spiteful. Frustrated, I went to return the minivan to my parents' house. I thought they would be home by now. When I arrived at my parents' house, my father came to greet me. "Did you enjoy the spa resort? That famous spa should have been quite satisfying." I didn't go because I'm the bride. Well, I was told by my mother-in-law that it's fine if the bride doesn't come. I was left behind when I woke up in the morning. No one was there. What? After that, my father started to do something. Then he had me sit in the passenger seat of the minivan and started driving. The car was headed back to my in-laws' house. When I glanced at my father's face as he drove, he seemed to be angry. Well, any father would get angry if their daughter was treated that way. But I was taken aback because I had never seen such a look on my usually calm father's face. Then my father stormed into my in-laws' house with something in his hand. My mother-in-law came out. "Oh, hello, and Happy New Year. Sorry for borrowing your minivan." "Happy New Year. Speaking of which, you left our daughter behind, didn't you?" "No, Mary said she had a fever and couldn't go, so we had to leave her behind reluctantly. I even offered to take care of her." My mother-in-law was lying through her teeth with a smirk on her face. She definitely never said anything like that, and I wasn't even sick with a cold. I wondered how she could tell such an obvious lie. I thought something must be wrong with her brain. "Oh, really? But our daughter said she was left behind. She told us she received a message on text saying it's fine if the bride doesn't come." "Did I say that? I don't remember." "You did. Look at this text." I showed her the text messages. However, she still insisted she was innocent. I was surprised at how thick-skinned she was to still deny it even cornered this far. In a sense, it was admirable. "You're still saying that, huh? You're truly a sad person." "Oh, by the way, can I charge you for the cleaning of the car interior?" "What? Why?" "Because you dirtied it with a married man nonetheless. What a filthy and disgusting scene." "What? What are you talking about?" "This right here." What my father had in his hand was a dash cam. This one has dual cameras, so it can record not only the outside but also the inside of the car. The advantage of being able to record the inside of the car is that it can provide evidence that you were driving safely. My mother-in-law doesn't know much about car supplies or cars in general, so there's a chance she didn't realize this was a dual camera. But what was she doing with a married man in the first place? I regretted watching the footage that my father played back. After all, there were images of my mother-in-law in an indecent posture with an unknown man. Even though my father-in-law is no longer in this world, it's insane to do such a thing with a married man. And what on earth was she doing in her family car? This was on the exact day you borrowed the car. Oh, how disgusting. Wait, this doesn't mean we were doing anything dirty. It's not something perverted. My mother-in-law was in a panic, fumbling and stammering on the spot. Tears welled up in her eyes. She was on the brink of crying. I found myself curious and somewhat amused about when she would finally break down. Maybe I'm being cruel, but after all the time she tormented me, she deserves this much. I couldn't be sympathetic or kind to someone like her. Then she began making pathetic excuses. Her reasoning was all over the place. It was clear she was flustered, yet she was desperate to defend herself. Suddenly, my father pulled another item from his pocket. It was a photograph. The picture showed my mother-in-law and the man from the video engaged in assorted acts in broad daylight. It was unthinkable. The background of the picture suggested it took place somewhere secluded, but the audacity to do this in the daytime was still shocking. You wouldn't have seen these if you hadn't been mean to my dear Mary. Why do you have that picture? Because I'm a detective, remember? Oh, do you recall now? Look, I've been telling you this all along, haven't I? My father is a detective, which explains why he had such a photograph. Coincidentally, the wife of the married man in the picture had hired him for an infidelity investigation. It turns out the wife of this man hired me to investigate her husband's affair. I was surprised to discover you were the other woman. I was going to inform her next week, but I didn't expect to show you this so soon. Ha! No, I'm innocent. I was just forced into an unpleasant situation. I am not at fault. Please don't tell his wife. It was against your will, was it? You seem to be enjoying yourself. We also have video footage of you whispering sweet words to the man. Do you want to see it? I'm sorry. My mother-in-law collapsed to her knees and burst into tears. I watched her in a pitiful state with a cold glare. Sensing that unusual situation, my husband arrived. I had run out of patience with him too, and I proposed a divorce. I've had enough. I want to end this. Let's get divorced. What? I'll go crazy if I stay in this horrible family any longer, so I'm leaving. Hold on. What will happen to our living expenses if you leave? I was fired a while ago. My husband dropped a bombshell. Apparently, he had been fired at the end of the year. I was taken aback. As he had not told me this despite knowing his job was terminated, he had still decided to go on a spa resort trip. He was a complete fool. I felt I had no choice but to divorce him. I took off my wedding ring and left it there. My husband desperately tried to stop me. Wait, can't you forgive me for not taking you on the spa resort trip? It's not just about the trip. I don't want to be with you or your mother anymore. If you want to live with your mother that much, then go ahead, you mama's boy. Please wait, don't go. I got a lawyer and proceeded with a divorce. My ex-husband seems to be having trouble managing his living expenses now that I'm gone. I thought he should find a new job quickly, but having been fired from his last job for theft, he'll probably struggle to find a new one. His previous company had fired him because he had been caught stealing. Apparently, they decided they couldn't trust him and didn't need someone like that. Unsurprisingly, the wife of my mother-in-law's lover demanded compensation for the affair. She ended up spending all the money left by my father-in-law to settle the payment. I haven't seen my ex-husband or ex-mother-in-law since, but I imagine they're probably living the hard life. It doesn't matter to me anymore. Currently, I'm living alone and enjoying my work. I made the right decision not to have a child with my ex-husband. Now I am enjoying a peaceful life and would be happy if I found a new love if such an opportunity arises. This is my plan to make sure to choose wisely. My name is Julia, a person known for her 99% seriousness. Yet here I am, standing outside my home, accompanied only by a solitary suitcase, hastily packed with my bare essentials. Clutched tightly in my hand are two ominous envelopes. It was on the cusp of early summer, the most enchanting season of the year, when I found myself abruptly ousted from my in-laws' residence. There was no forewarning, no hint of the impending storm. Enticed by the delightful aroma drifting from the kitchen, I completed my usual morning routine and descended the stairs, eager for breakfast. The tantalizing scent promised a feast, typical of my housemate's culinary prowess. Today, it seemed, breakfast was served American style. Brimming with anticipation, I pushed open the living room door, only to be greeted not by a sumptuous meal, but by an unexpected confrontation. "Julia, you deceived us," my mother-in-law's accusing voice pierced the air as tears welled in her eyes. Her words, laden with betrayal, echoed incoherently, accusing me of treachery and shattered trust. After delivering her accusations, my mother-in-law departed, leaving behind a lingering glare heavy with resentment. Meanwhile, my father-in-law remained, his gaze burning with simmering fury. "What's going on?" It was all I could muster, my confusion mounting. I couldn't fathom why my in-laws were suddenly treating me with such hostility. Just yesterday, we were on amicable terms, much like with my own parents. As I grappled with their inexplicable behavior, my husband Ryan, who had been silently consuming his breakfast, caught my eye. Last night, he began, explaining that he had opted to spend the night at our other residence near his workplace, leading me to believe he wouldn't be present this morning. Had he returned home late last night? Desperate for clarity, I rushed to Ryan, seeking his assistance. "What's wrong with Mom and Dad?" My words caught in my throat just as I was about to utter, "They're behaving." But my attention shifted abruptly to Ryan, whose demeanor had taken a chilling turn. His gaze pierced through me, laden with accusation and contempt, a far cry from the warmth and kindness I was accustomed to. "Ryan, how could you?" The words spilled from his lips, dripping with venom. Gone was the gentle melody of his usual speech, replaced by a harshness I had never encountered before. This was the same Ryan who would surprise me with my favorite flowers whenever his work kept us apart. "I'm sorry. I truly wish we could still travel together," he continued, his words a stark departure from the sentiments he had expressed just a week prior. With a gesture to the secretary, who stood nearby, he signaled for action. "Take care of it," he instructed, the command delivered with an air of finality. "You've finally done it, Julia, haven't you?" His accusation hung heavy in the air, stabbing at my core. "Married me for the money, didn't you?" "What? You've taken my mother's money," I protested, disbelief lacing my words. "Wait, that's not true." The accusation hung heavy in the air, the enormity of the alleged sum sinking in. "And now you're trying to justify it?" My father-in-law's voice was laced with scorn. "What? What on earth are you talking about, Dad? I swear, I didn't touch a penny of her money. Get out of this house." "Dad, what's happening?" I pleaded desperately for clarity, but received only a curt denial in response. It seemed I was being accused of embezzling a significant amount from my mother-in-law, a notion utterly unfounded in reality. I begged for understanding, for someone to believe me, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. A chill ran down my spine as the secretary reappeared, clutching a suitcase likely containing my belongings. "Please, Ryan, listen to me," I implored, but he shook his head with a disappointed expression, as though delivering lines in a tragic play. He was convinced of my guilt. "These are the divorce papers," he stated matter-of-factly, thrusting them towards me. "Once you've signed them, send them back to me." "What? Why?" I exclaimed, my voice trembling with disbelief. "I can't live with someone solely interested in a family inheritance. It's the family's decision." Ryan's words cut through the air like icicles, sending shivers down my spine. "Now, leave. It's not fair. I haven't done anything," I protested vehemently, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. Ryan's demeanor remained stoic as he commanded his secretary, "Ensure she never returns to this property." "What? What's happening? Stop." I struggled against the secretary's firm grip as he forcibly escorted me out, my suitcase in tow. Tears streamed down my face, mingling with the tumult of emotions swirling within me. Coming from humble beginnings, I knew the allure of wealth, but I was never one to resort to deceit. The grandeur of the mansion felt like a cruel contrast as I was unceremoniously ejected onto the street, barely half an hour after waking. Was this a nightmare? My mind raced, struggling to comprehend the surreal turn of events. Amidst the chaos, the imposing door slammed shut mercilessly. Just before it sealed me off completely, the secretary thrust another envelope into my hand, a final act of cruelty. "This is also from Mr. Ryan. Please take it." The secretary's voice broke through the tense silence. With a finality that matched the closing of the door, the lock clicked shut, sealing my fate. With trembling hands, I peered into the envelope, my heart sinking as I beheld its contents. A severance payment of $10,000. I had married Ryan 3 years prior, finding employment as an advisory accountant at the company where my father-in-law held the reins as CEO. Despite just passing my CPA exam, I was relegated to a subordinate role, more of an assistant to my colleagues out of pity. Then, one fateful day, everything changed. The pieces of the puzzle began to align in a way that didn't make sense. Something was amiss. Driven by a desire to prove myself as a competent CPA, I had delved into a task assigned to a colleague, only to uncover a web of deceit. My colleague had been manipulating the books, siphoning off hundreds of thousands of dollars. In that moment, a mixture of exhilaration and dread coursed through me. Yet I knew I couldn't turn a blind eye to such wrongdoing. Summoning my courage, I made the difficult decision to report the fraud to my father-in-law, the CEO. As someone deeply committed to honesty and integrity, turning a blind eye was never an option for me. Though the thought of reporting the fraud to the IRS crossed my mind, I hesitated. After all, such a drastic action would strip my colleague of their CPA status. a consequence I found difficult to reconcile with, especially after my own hard-won journey to becoming a CPA. My father-in-law, a shrewd businessman who had amassed a considerable fortune in a single generation, had been unwittingly targeted. "Thank you, Julia. We're indebted to you. Without your intervention, who knows how long they would have continued siphoning off funds." My father-in-law expressed his gratitude, his wife echoing his sentiments. I found myself celebrated as a hero, as if I had single-handedly saved the day. "Julia, if you're not involved with anyone at the moment, would you consider marrying our son?" The proposition caught me off guard, and I couldn't help but wonder if such flattery was commonplace among the wealthy. Though I laughed it off at the time, little did I know that my father-in-law's suggestion held genuine weight. Before I knew it, I found myself being introduced to their son, a man who praised me for safeguarding the family's assets. Bathed in their praise, I couldn't help but feel a sense of validation. After years of being criticized for my seriousness, it seemed that living authentically and earnestly had finally paid off. And in that moment, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of happiness. As a trainee CPA, I had never imagined ascending to the role of official advisory accountant, let alone being appointed as personal secretary to Ryan, the CEO's son. Ryan embodied the archetype of privilege, perpetually optimistic with a laissez-faire attitude that initially grated on my meticulous nature. Yet, amidst his dependency on me, I discovered a sense of fulfillment in aiding him. "Ryan, you really need to leave for the business meeting soon," I reminded him, checking my watch. "I'll manage just fine. You should get going." "Are you sure you won't stress out the driver this time?" he teased, flashing a charming smile. "I've got everything under control," I assured him, ushering him towards the door. Perhaps he appreciated my attention to detail more than I had realized. Our relationship evolved from professional to romantic, much to the delight of my father-in-law, who had harbored hopes of our union. The wedding was met with resounding approval, and for 3 years, the dynamics between Ryan, myself, and my in-laws remained largely unchanged. The most significant shift came with my father-in-law's decision to pass the company's reins to Ryan. As preparations for his ascent to the boardroom accelerated, my mother-in-law and I found ourselves immersed in a whirlwind of meetings and social engagements. Tonight was meant to be no exception, with a business partner's anniversary party on the agenda. Instead, I found myself alone in a sterile hotel room, a stark departure from the anticipated festivities. In the heat of anger and frustration, the thought of retreating to my parents' home briefly crossed my mind. But the notion didn't sit right with me. If Ryan wanted a divorce, so be it. But as someone who prides herself on honesty and sincerity, leaving under a cloud of suspicion was unthinkable. Seated on the bed, I revisited the contents of the envelope, divorce papers, and a severance payment. Despite the wave of emotions threatening to overwhelm me, I fought to maintain composure. I needed clarity. With a steadying breath, I closed my eyes and reaffirmed to myself, I haven't taken a penny of my mother-in-law's money. That's a fact. If not me, then who? The rush of excitement and fear surged once more. Gathering the bundle of $10,000, I resolved to make good use of it. After a quick touch-up of my makeup, I made my way to the private detective's office. A week later, my phone rang. "We have the results of the investigation." I arrived at the office, greeted by a stack of papers on the reception table. The report, thicker than anticipated, sent a shiver down my spine as I flipped through its contents, my hands trembling with anticipation. "What? Ha?" Each revelation in the report left me reeling, my head spinning as I absorbed the shocking truth. Exiting the building, I was greeted by an unpleasantly brisk breeze, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling within me. Collapsing beneath the shade of a nearby street tree, I grappled with the weight of the newfound knowledge. Passers-by cast curious glances my way, oblivious to the internal battle raging within me. With resolve coursing through my veins, I made my way to my in-laws' home, determined to confront them. Why was she allowed inside? My father-in-law demanded, his voice laced with disdain as he berated the maid. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward, presenting the signed divorce papers. "I've brought these," I stated firmly. "You instructed me to mail them. If you seek a divorce, I won't stand in your way." "But I refuse to be labeled a thief," I continued, my voice unwavering. Snatching the papers from my grasp, my father-in-law turned to leave. But I refused to let him go without a final declaration. "I demand an apology from all of you," I asserted, my words echoing through the room. If you're unwilling to acknowledge your wrongdoing, I'm prepared to pursue this matter in court." As the prospect of legal action loomed, my father-in-law halted in his tracks. "I was pleased when you accepted me, despite my humble background. I held genuine affection for you and your mother-in-law," he confessed, his voice tinged with remorse. Summoning my courage, I drew in a deep breath, my fists clenched at my sides. Then, with a measured exhale, I spoke. "I'm telling you, I'm innocent. Do you understand? Let me be clear. I didn't do anything," I reiterated, striving to maintain composure. What? What do you mean? I didn't." My mother-in-law's voice, seemingly emerging from the shadows, pierced the tense atmosphere with confusion etched across her features. "I mean exactly what I said," I affirmed, extracting the investigation report from my bag and passing it to her. "Please take a look." "What? What's this? What's going on?" Their eyes widened as they devoured the contents of the report, their expressions teetering on the brink of disbelief. The person responsible for stealing my mother-in-law's money, it was Ryan, I revealed, the weight of the truth heavy in my words. Before our marriage, Ryan had developed a reckless habit of overspending. He used to justify it by saying, "We have enough family wealth to live extravagantly for a lifetime." He indulged in frequent trips abroad, particularly enjoying gambling, often wagering hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time. Even his own parents had grown increasingly concerned, implementing measures to curb his access to their funds. They admonished Ryan, urging him to earn his own income. However, old habits die hard, and Ryan, consumed by his penchant for extravagance, sought out alternative means to sustain his lifestyle. That's when he concocted the embezzlement scheme that I ultimately uncovered. Ryan had manipulated my former colleague, who served as my father-in-law's accounting consultant, into falsifying the books. Mistakenly attributing the embezzlement solely to my former colleague, I reported it to my father-in-law without probing deeper, never uncovering the true mastermind. In reality, all the embezzled funds were lining Ryan's pockets. When the truth about my former colleague's embezzlement came to light, Ryan and his parents expressed gratitude towards me, but beneath their facade of appreciation, I sensed a simmering resentment. Was there a romantic involvement between the accountant and Ryan? It seems more like an affair, doesn't it? After all, she was married at the time, someone speculated. Nevertheless, Ryan professed his love for her, convincing her to embezzle funds for their future together. Another voice chimed in. As a consequence of her actions, my former colleague was terminated from her position and faced divorce from her husband, who had reached his breaking point. Despite obediently complying with Ryan's selfish request to keep his involvement under wraps, he ultimately wedded me. His persuasion tactic was clear: distract his parents by marrying a financially prudent partner like myself, thereby easing their suspicions and enabling him to continue his scheming. And indeed, his plan unfolded seamlessly. With my reputation for uncovering discrepancies, my in-laws relaxed their vigilance regarding Ryan's extravagant spending, simply because I was his wife. "Mother-in-law, why did you believe I stole your money?" I questioned, my voice tinged with disbelief. "Ryan told me he entrusted you with my card, Julia," she confessed, avoiding my gaze. I felt a pang of betrayal as her words sank in. "Ryan, he's been taking his responsibilities seriously lately, and I thought there might be occasions where it wouldn't be convenient to pay in cash, so I allowed him to carry my credit card. But then he said, I mustn't use it recklessly, so we'll have Julia manage it. And so, Her voice trailed off, her expression clouded with regret. "So, because of that, I was accused of theft," I interjected bitterly. Just to clarify, Ryan never mentioned any of this to me. Caught off guard by the realization of her son's deception, my mother-in-law's features fell slack with disbelief. "By the way, mother-in-law, have you read about what your stolen money was used for?" I pressed, seeking to redirect the conversation. I don't understand anything anymore," she admitted, her voice laden with confusion and distress. My mother-in-law's voice trembled, barely audible over the weight of her emotions as tears welled up in her eyes. I returned the report to them, bracing myself for their reaction. "The purchase of a condominium," my mother-in-law murmured, her voice laden with disbelief. "Let me see that," my father-in-law interjected, his brows furrowed in confusion. "But Ryan already has another house near his office. Why would he buy a condo for the senior accountant?" It's becoming clear now. Ryan has been entangled with her all along. Lately, he's been spending an unusual amount of time at the other house. likely staying with her. Ryan has always been with that woman. He loved her more than he ever loved me, Julia, my mother-in-law confessed, her words heavy with heartbreak. I remained composed, devoid of emotion, having already processed the nauseating contents of the report countless times before this moment. It appears Ryan has been indulging in quite the affair with the senior accountant. They even frequent underground casinos. I added matter-of-factly. Underground casinos? Please take a look at the last page, my mother-in-law urged, a glimmer of hope flickering in her eyes. My father-in-law frantically flipped through the pages of the report, his brows furrowed in concern. "What's this staggering amount?" he exclaimed, his voice tinged with disbelief. "He's deeply involved with the underground casino. It seems he'll be grappling with debt for the foreseeable future," I explained solemnly. Underground casino. My father-in-law's voice trailed off as he sank to the floor, overcome with shock. "Just to be certain, none of our other cards have been compromised, correct?" I inquired, prompting my father-in-law into action. "Huh?" His eyes widened in realization as he rushed to the nearest telephone, panic evident in his movements. "Stop everything. Cancel that card immediately." His urgent command reverberated throughout the house. Later, I received a formal apology from my in-laws. They expressed regret for concealing their son's extravagant spending and his affair. While I appreciated their honesty, I couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment. Their apology seemed incomplete without addressing the hurt they caused me. Nevertheless, I handed them the completed divorce papers. With a small nod, I began to gather my belongings, ready to leave. But as they pleaded for me to stay, their sudden change in demeanor caught me off guard. Just a week ago, they had treated me like a criminal. "I'm sorry, but isn't it a bit late for that?" I interrupted, my voice tinged with frustration. "I loved you both and considered you family, but you disregarded my feelings and opinions. Do you have any idea how hurtful that was for me?" Despite my efforts to remain composed, a solitary tear betrayed my emotions, quickly followed by a cascade of tears streaming down my cheeks. "Julia." The divorce papers lay before us, a stark reminder of the irreparable rift between us. "This divorce is what your son desires. Shouldn't we respect his wishes?" It was evident that he had moved on with someone else. After composing myself and injecting a final touch of sarcasm, an abrupt alarm pierced the silence, jolting us all. Startled by the sudden noise, I furrowed my brow in confusion, only to have my father-in-law grasp my wrist urgently. "Hey, what's going on? What are you doing?" I questioned, taken aback by his sudden urgency. "You should come too, honey," he insisted, leading me outside to the garden. There, the gate that had shut me out just a week ago stood before us, and we heard a voice from the other side. "Hey, the gate won't open. Is anyone home?" Ryan's frustrated voice echoed through the gate, followed by the sound of him banging on it vigorously. "What's happening? My car won't start either. This is ridiculous." Ryan's frustration was palpable as the annoying alarm persisted, refusing to cease its blaring. "Listen closely, Ryan," my father-in-law began, his tone firm and unwavering. "Huh? Dad, can you hear me? My key isn't working. Can you unlock it from your side?" Ryan's voice crackled through the intercom, tinged with confusion. "I told you to listen, Ryan," my father-in-law's voice boomed over the intercom. What's going on?" Ryan's tone faltered, sensing the shift in his father's demeanor. "You have no right to open this gate," my father-in-law declared firmly. "What? Why would you say that?" Ryan's voice rose in disbelief. "Isn't it obvious? I didn't think you could be so oblivious. We're aware of everything. All of it," my father-in-law continued, his voice unwavering. Is Mom there too?" Ryan's voice trembled with uncertainty. "Ryan, Julia meant the world to us, but you're a different story. We want nothing to do with you ever again," my father-in-law declared resolutely. What's happening? Mom, are you there? Please say something," Ryan pleaded desperately. "We know that you framed Julia. We know about the embezzlement. We know about your affair and your debts. We know everything," my father-in-law stated, his voice filled with conviction. "Wait a minute. Where did you get such absurd ideas? Stop spreading lies." Ryan's voice cracked with indignation. Ryan's frantic protests continued, but to no avail. Anxiety gnawed at me as I wondered if his parents would be swayed by his words and doubt me once again. However, my fears were unfounded. "I trust Julia. So do I, Dad, his mother interjected firmly. Mom, Ryan's voice wavered, betraying his disbelief. We sincerely apologize. Julia, would you please consider taking my position? His father implored. What? Hey, is Julia there too? Ryan's voice erupted in anger, reverberating through the air. He seemed to be causing quite a commotion. However, his resistance was short-lived as security personnel arrived to calm him down. In the end, I agreed to my father-in-law's proposal, but with one condition: I will always be honest. Can you trust me unconditionally? They both nodded solemnly. A year later. Do you really think I'm cut out for this executive role? I hesitated, lingering in front of the executive office door. My father-in-law gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Despite my divorce from Ryan, I still addressed the CEO as Dad, as we had mutually agreed upon. Julia, what our company truly needs is someone with your integrity and sincerity. It's a perfect fit for you, don't you think? He offered, his smile warm and encouraging. However, I couldn't resist a slightly mischievous question. Do you ever regret letting Ryan go? He should be the one stepping into this role, shouldn't he? Since the incident, my in-laws had distanced themselves from Ryan. Initially, he would often come pleading for financial assistance, but once he realized they wouldn't comply, he stopped. The son who had vanished under the weight of enormous debt. I wondered if he was still with that senior. Ryan let out a small, lonely sigh, but Ryan isn't the one meant for this position. The responsibility was too much for him. We're the ones to blame for indulging him too much, my father-in-law admitted. Dad, I murmured sympathetically. Hey, don't look so disheartened. Stand tall and proud, he encouraged. Yes, I replied with newfound determination, reaching for the handle of the executive office door. As it swung open effortlessly, I stepped inside, ready to embrace my new role.